Okay, so in this short video, I'm going to talk about opening a file and doing some cropping of that file. So file open would be one way or a quick way to do this. So file open, and then you're going to navigate to wherever you're storing your files. I assume you have some strategies there. And of course, you can see here working on a Mac. So I would not be the person to inform you about how to work on your PC. That would be something you already know. So we're going to go into my storage, and I might as well pull up an image that from this project. Okay, that is not so exciting. I'll do this one. Okay, so I've selected the file and I'm going to click open, and then it's going to appear now within that workspace that we talked about in the first video. So I'm going to move my properties down here. Actually, this is not how I like to organize it. All right, so we have the large image here in the center, and then over on the right hand side in this layers palette, you'll see it again in this really minute form. So if you haven't worked in Photoshop before, a super important and very basic feature is this one called layers. If by chance you don't have that on your screen, go to the window, drop down, and you'll be able to turn on any of these palettes that you want. We're going to be opening a few of them up later, but you can see I have a check mark next to the layers. If by chance the layers wasn't there, this is how you would go find it. Window, layers, click that, and then it'll appear. Then of course you could then save this as a palette, as a workspace that you could return to. So it says that the background layer is visible now. It's the first one. Within Photoshop, you'll often have a whole array of these, 4, 5, 6 or more layers visible. But initially, here is an image, and I think I was going to talk a little bit about the crop tool, since for this first project, we're going to be cropping these into squares to go into this typology grid that we're going to work on. So to change the dimensions of this, because it has come in as a rectangle, I'm going to use the crop tool. So going over to the left-hand side here, about the fourth tool down, you can see this kind of marquee. If I hover my mouse over it, it actually turns into the crop tool. Also, if I do that, you'll see that the letter C appears. So if you want a keyboard shortcut to learn, by clicking on the letter C on your keyboard, you jump to the crop tool regardless. But for now, let's not be too fancy. We're going to click on it. When you've clicked on it, you might notice that around the edges, there's this dotted or dashed line and sort of these handles in the corners. When my mouse hovers near them, it turns into these arrows. And just by clicking and dragging that, I can change the format of the photo. So that is basically how the crop tool works. You just designate with a marquee. You probably used a tool like this before. If let's say you were doing something crazy, you went all the way down here, and you're like, oh, I don't want that. The escape key is a quick way to get out of this, so we're just going to hit escape. Don't hit enter. I didn't say enter or return. That'll commit the crop. Hit the escape key and you jump right out. Up here at the top, a couple of things might be active that you may or may not like. You can see that it has a couple of like a rule of thirds, grid diagonals. These are things that can be overlaid onto your grid as you are working, as you're cropping. But I saw one of those, but I don't really like it. I like to have actually no defaults up there. Never show overlay. That's what I'm going to go for. Okay. One thing, though, that will be helpful for this first project is to actually set up your crop tool with prescribed dimensions. So up here in the upper left, it is actually your chance to set up parameters for the crop. Let's say you're doing a whole lot of photography, you're doing a bunch of wedding photography, people want 8x10 images. You could actually set up an 8x10 or 5x7 frame. So every crop you make already comes in at 5x7. What I think is interesting for us is this W times H times resolution, width, height by resolution. So that's usually selected by default, and you're going to fill in the values here. So for this first project, you're going to be cropping each of your photographs as a square. So we're going to put in 4 It's coming in as inches, by the way. 4 by 4, and then the pixels per inch, that's the next thing. What is your resolution? You have two choices, pixels/inch or pixels by centimeter. The rest of the world is probably thinking about centimeters. We're still living in America. So for us, we, of course, go inches. So let's go 300 pixels an inch. That is a term for resolution. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later. Let's just trust it for today. So that means now, whenever I go back and change this and drag it around, you can see that it is forcing a square upon my crop, which is exactly what I want for this first project. If you had put 5 by 7 up here, you'd be getting a rectangle, 2 inches by 9 inches, of course, a very long, thin rectangle, so on and so forth. You would have to come up and delete that, actually hit delete to eliminate those. So keep an eye on that. If you do set your crop dimensions and then you open a new file, those crop dimensions are going to remain up there. So be aware that you'd have to go up and delete them and return them. Okay. So let's say I want to crop this very tight. I am using my mouse, my keypad, to drag around the image, decide exactly where I want to make that crop. You can see if I do it up here, I've actually left a whole bunch of gray space. So it will crop that. It will crop with that about an inch, inch and a half there at the bottom of gray space. Not what I want for my project. Maybe it would be good if you wanted to put some text down there, or caption or something. Not what we're doing. So I'm going to give it a little bit more space around there. You can actually pivot things. Let's say you wanted that circle, that absence right there, to be in the lower left. That just was your pleasure. Go for it. And then be careful, you're going to crop some gray space here. So if I wanted to crop really tight in on that, maybe instead of seeing that outer circle as a circle, I was going to think about the inner circle. So let's consider that as an option. All right. Oops, I got a little gray space down there. That's not going to make me happy. So I have to keep all these features in, and then I'm going to hit the return key to commit that crop. Oh, sorry, hit it twice. Apologize. So now that's the crop. If you like it, you're ready to go. If you don't like it, you have two choices for undoing it. Just going to teach you another Photoshop technique. Edit, undo. So with the Command Z key, you step backward one step at a time. The Command Z is true in all kinds of software, all kinds of word processing features. So that is one option for you. Command Z will undo it. And then if you go back, redo it, it only goes forward or backwards one step, which might seem limiting, but it actually can be real helpful. So you can undo it and do it and undo it and do it. The other option you have for undoing things and going back more than one step is in a very important palette. I'm going to tell you about that right now too. The window, you want to have your history palette visible. History is going to let you go back about 20 steps. So if the undo crop or the undo feature lets you have one step of regret, so you can go backwards in time one step, the history panel or the history pane lets you go back 20 steps of regret. That's pretty nice. What it means is that Photoshop is recording about 20 things that you've done and allowing you to go backwards and regret and reverse them. So I actually keep my history palette over here all the time. So in my workspace, the two things I always have open or available, quick shortcuts, are layers. And then this tab, I'm going to click on it, brings up my history. This will begin to be formed with lots and lots of tools or tasks, things you've done, things you've accomplished. So far, all I did was I started with the original, and then which I opened, it says, and then I cropped it. Now, if I had changed the color, if I had changed the darkness, the tone of it, there would be a list here of all of those steps, and I could go forward or back. Right now, I'm just sort of toggling between two. But the history palette is a fantastic way for you to go back in time and reclaim something. Again, about 20 steps. Otherwise, you always have the edit, undo, which is the Command Z key. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do right now. I'm going to talk about saving in another video, but that is how I use the crop tool.